When people think of the Greek god of the sky, they most often think of the crafty son of Kronos. But in the Greek language, it is Ouranos, not Zeus, which means sky or heaven. Hi, I'm Kevin McLean. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, subscribe, share, and check out our Patreon page, or other options to support the channel below. It is Ouranos who is the personification of the sky itself, and it is through the union of the sky and the earth that many important deities come to be. According to Hesiod, Uranus was the fatherless son of Gaia, and that is because he came to be as the opposite of the earth. In Hesiod's portrayal, many of the primordial gods come to be through a relation of opposites, and Uranus is no different. The name Ouranos is likely related to the Proto-Indo-European word for rain. In origin, it is possible that Ouranos was specifically a rain god, and a god of the dark sky, specifically the night sky, which he maintains an association with in myth. It is also possible that the myth of Kronos severing his genitals, and the blood and semen of Ouranos flowing down, spawning giants and Aphrodite, may also relate to his more ancient role as a rain god, whose fluid flows down upon and fertilizes the earth, creating life through their union. However, even if meant as rain, it may also represent the spirit of the sky entering into the land, giving rise to beings like nymphs, giants, and the primordial creatures that were thought to grow up from the earth. The birth of Aphrodite may also relate to the transition from night to day, represented by the severing of heaven and earth, with the possible etymology of Aphrodite meaning shining foam, a reference to dawn rising up from the sea, and hence how Aphrodite was born out of the sea as a result of Kronos and his initiation of time. Aside from this foundational myth, Ouranos was rarely personified. He was thought of as the physical sky in which the stars were affixed, and specifically as the bronze dome that was the roof of the sky held up by Atlas. Instead, he passes on most of his important aspects to his children. The sky and the earth had 12 sons and 6 daughters together. First of note among these are the 6 titans, representing time, spatial direction, and the central axis of the heaven and earth. But equally important, he fathered both the Cyclopes and the Hekatonchires. The Cyclopes were the primordial gods of thunder and lightning, and the Hekatonchires were gods of winds and clouds. Although Ouranos was the father of the Brontes and the Hekatonchires, primordial gods of storm, clouds, and wind, he locked them beneath the earth, and Gaia became upset with this, suffering great pains. And it was this that prompted her to urge her son Kronos to sever the genitals of Ouranos so that she could release these. However, Kronos does not release the Brontes and the Hekatonchires, and thus the role of Zeus is as the freer, the liberator of the winds, rains, lightning, and storm. For it was he who freed them from their prison, and they who gave him the power of lightning in return, which he used to defeat Kronos. And thus we see how Zeus is connected to the storm as the releaser or bringer of the storm. So the children who came to express the various physical qualities of the sky, in that it expands out in all directions, It revolves at a central point, and the motions of the sky, such as the movements of sun, moon, and stars, are how people notice the passing of time. It thunders, it rains, it blows, it clouds over. The most important, and one of the only myths of Ouranos, has to do with his conception of the Titans and his castration by Kronos. This castration has several meanings. The first is that with the sky and earth united, the sky was locked in place. The Titans could not be born as there was no room. Once they created room by severing the connection between the sky and the earth, this created directions, the pole, the limit, and it also created time, as the sky was no longer fixed in place, but rotated. So with the severing of earth and heaven, time began, overseen by Kronos. Things were no longer bound in place, but flowed. As Ouranos was connected to the night sky, a potential additional reading of this myth is that his castration represents the transition from night to day, with Kronos acting as a transitional deity of dawn and dusk, the transitional points between day and night. And this aspect also connects with the possible notion of Aphrodite being a goddess of dawn mentioned earlier, as she is specifically generated out of the sea after Kronos severs earth and sky. However, it should be made clear that Ouranos means the sky, not simply the night sky, and his association with the night likely comes from him being thought to be most visible at night, with the stars fixed within him, and not for any particular nocturnal qualities. Ouranos is sometimes used as a name for the abode of the gods rather than Olympus. That is, they were said to live in the sky. Some suggest that this was a later invention and that the physical mountain of Olympus had originally been thought of as the physical home of the gods. I think this unlikely. We see sky deities regularly worshipped on mountains in all cultures because these places are closest to the sky. Mount Olympus is simply the Greek version of Mount Meru of the Vedic and Buddhist religions, intended to represent the celestial height. That the Olympian gods live in Ouranos highlights their lofty nature, but it also demonstrates that the Olympian gods were not physical parts of the world. Zeus, at the earliest period we have record of, was never confused with the physical sky, Uranus, and thus he was not the physical sky, nor was he the manifestation of the storm, which were the Brontes and the Hecatonchires. He is the spirit of the sky that directs the physical operations of the sky, much like the spirit of man controls the body. While Ouranos and his children demonstrate the many powers and aspects of the sky, almost none of them had a cult, and this is because the physical entity itself was not the object of worship because it could not respond to worshippers' requests. Only spirits had this power, and thus the Greek Olympian gods cannot be seen to be simply the representations of physical nature. They are spirits that exist within that nature, that are related and direct that nature, but are not equated to it. And Ouranos gives us a very clear example of how Zeus, who is most often thought of as the god of the sky, is not the sky itself. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, support us through one of the options below. A big thanks to my Patreon supporters, and as always, stand tall.